Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is the call operator. Welcome to the presentation of the results for the first part of 2025 of the Acea Group. As a reminder, all participants are in listen-only mode. After the presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. Should anyone need assistance during the conference call, they may seek an operator by pressing star and zero on their telephone. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Mr. Miki, Head of IR. Thank you, and good afternoon, and welcome to the conference call for the presentation of the Acea Group for the first half of 2025. Fabrizio Palermo, CEO, the Deputy General Manager and CFO, Francesco Ragni, will outline the results obtained in the first half of 2025 and the guidance for 2025. As usual, at the end of the presentation, there will be a Q&A session. I'll leave the floor now to the CEO, Mr. Palermo, who will make comments about the first slide of the presentation. Fabrizio, you have the floor. Thank you, Dario, and good afternoon to you all. Thank you very much for being here for the presentation of the results of the first half of 2025. I'm glad to announce that the Acea Group is among the leading companies for the water service in Italy. And I will start the presentation of the results, as usual, by making an analysis of the regulatory and market environment. Now, as to the water business, I'd like to outline the approval of ARERA tariffs. And as you know, we have received a technical quality and contractual quality incentive that was recognized to Acea for an amount of 36 million euros. As to distribution of electricity, tariffs, provisional tariffs of rating were published in May last, and ARERA has adjusted the evaluation of RAB by following and adopting the Italian IPCA and calculated by Eurostat Italy. Now let's move to commodity prices and inflation. Gas and electricity power in the first half of 2025 recorded an increase of plus 28% for electricity and plus 12% of gas versus last year, same period. Now, on page 3, we have listed all of the main events and operations carried out by the group in the first half of 2025, which follow up the strategy that is outlined in the business plan for 2028. First of all, the WTE in Rome, where we expect to start work very soon, and then the binding offer received from Eni Plenitude for the acquisition of Acea Energia SPA, which is part of a strategy that was contained in the business plan. Now, this deal will help the group to strengthen the group as an infrastructural operator, as we shall then tell during the presentation. And then I'd like to point out the setting up of a new company, Gas, that was established to help the group grow in the gas distribution sector, confirming our focus on infrastructure businesses. Moreover, I'd like to tell that Moody on the 28th of May improved the rating from stable to positive. Now, this reflects the good financial profile of the company, and it also confirms the positioning of the group towards the infrastructure business. Now, if we now go to the main terms of the offer that you see on slide 4, the deal was approved by the board of directors. The offer relates to the acquisition of Acea Energia with the exclusion of energy efficiency, electrical mobility, and energy management, which are not included, and the closing is expected by the end of June 2026. Let me remind you that the disposal of Acea Energia is in line with the strategy that we have in our business plan, and this will help the group become stronger as an infrastructural operator. This will help us to reach more than 95% of the EBITDA, which will come from regulated businesses. And this will give Acea better visibility and stability, thus reducing the volatility of the results connected to the market. Now, the market of the sale of electricity and gas is characterized by the need of strong economies of scale. And one of the rationale of this deal, of this transaction, is due to the fact that on the market we have big players that are capable to attract a high number of customers, thus with an increased competition on prices as that has occurred on other markets. For this reason, we decided to accept the binding offer received from Plenitude. If we go to the highlights of the first half of 2025, slide number 6, now the results show a strong growth of all economic indicators and confirm the soundness of the financial structure of the group. In line with what envisaged from IFRS 5, the economic results, with the exception of net profit, do not include the selling of Acea Energia. The reported EBITDA, 731 million, plus 12% versus the first half of 2024, and the growth of recurring EBITDA corrected for change scope and one-offs will be seen later on, but it is equal to 19%, driven by the business of water, Italy, grids, public lighting, and generation businesses. The contribution of regulated EBITDA is now 49%. Net profit, 27 million, is going up by 32%, 7% organically, following the dynamic recorded at operational level. CapEx went up by 18% at 668 million, including grants. Now, the operating cash flow, 117 million, and a net EBITDA pro forma 3.36 times. Now, this ratio takes into account the cash in of the proceeds of the sale of Acea Energia and the sales of the high voltage network. I'll leave you the floor to Francesco Arani, the CFO, who will get into the details of the results. Thank you very much, Fabrizio, and good afternoon to you all. We are now at slide number 7, where we see the main indicators of the dynamic of the first half of 2025, where you see a strong growth. EBITDA in the first half of this year, Acea has recorded a growth of 9% versus the previous years, adjusted by one-offs and change in scope. CapEx, as you can see, 668 million euros during the first half of the year. Investments have grown by 20% versus the same period of last year. Now, a net profit, which includes the contribution of Acea Energia, goes up by 7% on a recurrent basis and reflects the good operating performance of the company. The financial position, 4.9 billion to 5.4 billion as at 30 June of 2025. These data do not include the net debt, which is represented by discontinued operations. Acea Energia is subject to the deal. Now, the net financial performance pro forma, as you can see in the note, moves from 4.3 billion euro in December 24 to 4 billion 74. Now, here, let me remind you the data at the end of 2024 included 9 months of Acquedotto del Fiore that was still to be integrated. Now, let me move on to the next slide, and let's see the EBITDA in the first half of 25, the EBITDA went up by 59 million euros, and this is due to water tariff growth and the contribution of grids and public lighting, and also because of the increase in prices of the energy prices also increase in volumes. Now, on the right, you see the one-offs and change in scope amounting to 9 million for the first half of 2024, which relate to the retroactive application of the tariff update relating to MTI 4 that was accounted in the first quarter of 2024, the consolidation of Acquedotto del Fiora, and the release of tariff relief fund and the Terni WTE shutdown for revamping. Now, as to the first half of 2025, you have only the water quality incentives. Now, at consolidated level, it was 36 million, but sorry, at group level, 36 million, at consolidated level, 25 million. Let me now move on to the recurring net profit, which goes up versus the first half of 2024, which is relating to the operating performance, which contributes 18 million. Now, this is made up for by the financial management with a reduction of financial proceeds because of the reduction of rates. Now, for the EBITDA, you see the detail of the one-off for the first half of 24 and of 2025. Let me now move to CapEx. And here you also need to take into account the contribution of Acea Energia in the first half of 2025. CapEx went up by 18% versus last year, and 87% is related to the regulated business, water and environment and grids. Now, you see that the contribution of regulated businesses to EBITDA is 96%. 95 million euros of CapEx are financed by public contributions for the water grids and the grids and public lighting. And then you see all of the initiatives that were carried out, the intervention on purification systems, the widening of the sewage network. Let me now move on to cash flow. The absorption of cash is around 460 million, and this is related to the change in working capital relating to greater credits relating to the perequation of grids, which will be then resolved by the end of the year. And then also CapEx, as we remember, they went up in the fourth quarter of 2024, and then regulatory receivables long term that are to be absorbed in the second part of the year, and an increase of commercial receivables for the accounting of the reward in the water business that we cash in the third quarter. To a greater transparency, we have represented the effect of the company consolidated at equity. For instance, the passage of Acquedotto del Fiore, which has an impact of 18 million in 2025. They were 3 million in 2024. And the presentation here also puts Acea Energia among the discontinued operations. I'm not covering here the other items because they are clearly understandable. Let's now move on to the financial structure. The average cost of debt in the first half of the year, 2.7% versus 2024, which was 2.69%. Now, of course, this is affected also by the reduction of rates. Nowadays, 11% of our debt is at variable rate. Please remember that in February 2025, we reimbursed at maturity the yen 20 billion private bond issued in March. And And then we received 500 million euros from the EIB, 500 millions, and two new loans were signed for a total of 180 millions, of which a direct loan of 125 and a guaranteed loan of 55 millions by Sacha. Let me also tell you that we have repatriated in Italy the issuing of our bonds on the MOT market, which was approved by Consob. Let me now move to the description of the individual business units. Page 12, you have the water Italy. Now, the numbers have been recalculated to take into account the new impact of the new regulatory framework. Now, the first half of last year, we did not have this effect, and also the results include also Acquedotto del Fiore, which is now consolidated at equity. The data for 2025 also adjusted for the rewards received for technical and contractual quality. Here you see the result going up by 32 million, the EBITDA, thanks to tariff growth and the high results of companies consolidated at equity. Now, net of public funds, an increase of 21% versus last year, which is related to maintenance on the network and purification plants. Now, grids and public lighting despite the WACC going down by 40 basis points, the EBITDA goes up by 8 million plus 4%, 225 million euros in the first half of the year because of the investments made, of the RAB, and the change in the RAB revaluation method starts in 2025. CapEx net of public grants are stable, 150 million euros. As to the environment business, net of one-offs, given due to the revamping of the WTE. Now you can see the stable recurring EBITDA. Investments are going down by some 4 million because of the revamping of the Terni WTE that was carried out in the first half of 2024. Now, as to generation, EBITDA is going up by 14 million versus the previous year, thanks to higher prices on the energy markets and greater installed photovoltaic capacity. You see that the photovoltaic capacity has gone up to 412, as you can see at the bottom of the slide. Now, investments in the year were 11 million. As to the guidance for 2025, because of the results that we achieved in the first half of 2025, and because of the change in scope, that is the disposal of Acea Energia, which is now among discontinued operations. The guidance has been revised, where EBITDA is going to grow in 2025 between +6 and +8% versus 2024, and the CapEx at 1.2 billion. Now, all of these data were revised based on the EBITDA of 1,438, which already includes of the sale of Acea Energia and the contribution of the company's consolidated equity in 2025. And then you see here the guidance. Net debt EBITDA between 3.4 and 3.5 times, and this includes the price of sales of high voltage grid and of Acea Energia. This is it. As far as we are concerned, we can now take your questions. This is the Chorus conference operator. You can start the Q&A session. To ask a question, you may press star and one on your touch tone telephone. To remove your question, please press star and two. Please pick up the receiver when asking the questions. Whoever wants to ask a question may press star and one now. Now, the first question is by Francesco Sala with the Banca Akros. Now, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the results, and thank you for giving me the floor. First of all, can you give us an indication of the closing of the sales of the high voltage network to Terna? Will it be in 2026? And then question on the water business. We've seen an increase of EBITDA. Is this going to repeat the result in Q3 and Q4? And then the working capital. Can you tell us something about the changes or the absorption for the full year 2025? And then can you tell us the impact of the M&As in 2025 after the disposal of Acea Energy? Okay, I'll take the first question about the high voltage network. It will be closed within September of this year, so it will occur in 2025. As to the question about the water business, the growth of EBITDA in the second quarter of 2025 versus 2024 was around 9%. And this growth was related to linear operating costs prices. The normalized growth here is 6%. As to the impact of M&As, so D&As will be around 140 million. 55 of these will be related to discontinued operations. Now, as to the working capital, as I said, during the first half of the year, we usually have greater receivables for the peroquation uh, items, but also because of the growth in CapEx in 2024. As we usually say, we expect the working capital to go back to normal by the end of the year, and therefore a stabilization of these items, which we have described when talking about receivables. Okay, thank you. The next question by Javier Suarez with Mediobanca. Now, good evening to you all. I have a couple of questions. The first about the guidance. Now, you have revised upward your guidance for the EBITDA mm, up to 1,370 million euros. This may be explained by the quality premium of water and then the high voltage network sale to Terna will occur by the end of the year. But then you have some other 30 million more of increase in the guidance, which I cannot understand what is this going to be, and will we have it, also in the next following years? So to understand, is it a one-off or will it be sustainable in time? Another question about the regulatory framework and the renewal of the electricity distribution networks in Italy. Can you give us your view? Can you tell us something about your conversations with the administrations, with the authorities? What can we expect before the end of the summer? And what is the impact that this will have on upfront payments? And then waste to energy plant in Rome. Can you give us a few details about the timing of the investment? When will you start investing on this plant? And when will this WTE plant be up and running, therefore operation for the Acea Group? Well, thank you very much, Javier. Now, as to the guidance, over and above the water premiums, well, part of this is related to the uh, application of the IPCA in Italy, and then, of course, also to operational efficiency. So the growth is not only related to detractors, but also efficiency. Of course, the one-off is related to premiums, and the rest is coming from operational efficiency. Now, as to ARERA, we always are asked this question by analysts. We cannot know what ARERA is going to tell the ministries, the relevant ministries, who then have to decide for us, the concession of electricity grids is fundamental to guarantee greater capex versus the current ones to guarantee the safety and the resilience of the grids themselves. For the Acea Group, whatever decision is taken, what is important is to have more time than we have now to invest more in the networks to have greater safety and resilience of the network. These investments can no longer be delayed. We are always committed to this, and we have always done so, but we're ready to invest more to meet the goals that I have just mentioned. The other question is about the WTE in May. Now, the authorization process is now ongoing to allow us to get into the building site. Now, as to the financial exposure, the first investments will be between the end of this year and the beginning of next year. As we said during the other conference calls, the project will be financed with a project financing scheme. It will not be, you know, computed, posted within Acea accounts. We are now finalizing the funding contracts, and I'd like to reassure you all that the project is very important. Now, the next question by Roberto Letizia with good afternoon. Thank you very much for the presentation, for allowing me to ask questions. I'd like to ask something about the disposal of the retail business. Now, we've seen the evaluation, which is also indicated in your presentation, but then the transaction per se also includes the deconsolidation of cash relating to the reverse factoring. So the multiples are a bit lower, therefore, versus the valuations that we've seen now on the market the past few years. And also because the retail this year has been very strong. Your guidance was around 140 million euros, and perhaps you could, you know, um, go a bit higher. Can you give us, some market considerations why you have been given this price? And then the earnout. To what extent Acea will cash in the earnout next year? And then, do we have to take into account any reverse factoring that we have to take into account for the debt at the end of the year, or if the debt is clean from reverse factoring after the sales of Acea Energia? And then the sales energy, does it put an end of the transformation of the group towards a more regulated business? Or are you keeping the generation within the perimeter, which is not a regulated business, which could be also the object of a disposal? I'm very sorry, I have a few more questions very rapidly. When are you going to update the business plan, considering after the disposals, the company is completely transformed? And what, makes the guidance move towards the lower range or the upper range of the figures given? I start from the first question. When we speak of M&As, we are always speaking of multiples. And here I'll give you some more details. Here, the issue is the strategic nature of the operation. As the CEO said before, this was part of the strategy that we outlined when presenting the business plan, that is focusing on infrastructural business. The retail market at the moment is a market where there is quite a lively competition. We saw what happened in last year on the market. Now, operations of deals on the retail markets haven't been done for some time. Many operators are coming onto the market. It's becoming like the telcos market of a few years ago. The market is concentrating. Big leaders are acquiring customers. They have scale, economies of scale. They have their own channels. They have the possibility of using cross-selling. Acea Energia, as a standalone basis, we did not have these features. For this reason, we took advantage of a favorable market condition, and the goal was that of disposing of the company and reinvest the proceeds in infrastructural businesses. Now, if we then consider the transaction itself, the multiples are a bit lower than the other transactions of on the market. I look, however, the enterprise value on the basis of the customer base. Uh, in December 2024, we had 1,180, sorry, 1,380,000 customers. From here, you need to remove the customers of tutelato market, of safeguarded market, where margins are very different and quite low, and the free market customers are around 1,200,000. If I do the relationship between 460 million enterprise value and the number of customers, 1,200,000, we get to 385 euros per customer. And if you add the earnout, it goes up a bit more. Now, of course, you need to take into account the mix between light and gas. We know that the gas customers have a greater value than the light or energy customers because because of the different churn rate. I cannot give you my view about the other transactions on the market because every deal of a transaction of this kind is unique in itself. And then the EBITDA recorded in 2023 and 24 by Acea Energia is a very good EBITDA, very good result, which is due to the work of the management team that has changed the performance of the company. If you go and look at the history data between 2014 to 2021, and if you go and look at the net profit, you will see that in that period, the net profit has not grown. Basically, after that, the company has repositioned itself also thanks to the setting up of commercial partnerships, which are no longer exclusive in nature. So being a standalone operator, it's very difficult. In the past, when you asked, whether the results of 2024 can be replicated in 2025? Well, it depends on the competitive scenario. There are operators which are quite big. There's one that has 17,000 points of sales, and they have acquired quite a high customer base. These are pieces of information which describe the context and to explain that this has been a very good deal both for the seller, like us, which we are a small company, and also it's a very valuable deal for the buyer, which is a big operator. Now, EBITDA, we have achieved very good EBITDA numbers in the past 2 years, but below the EBITDA, you have commercial costs, which are classified as CapEx. So if we wanted to work out a multiple, it's much better to use the type of EBITDA that we have used. Of course, uh, when it comes to selling companies, it very much depends on the company itself. There are companies that have commercial channels and so on. We are convinced of the good quality of the deal, regardless of the economic results. Now, as to the use of proceeds, now from this deal, the proceeds will be used to grow our infrastructural business. Now, the earnout is related to performance parameters from here to the closing date. Uh, And as to this, we don't know uh, how much will be considered as additional proceed turnover because it depends on the market conditions. The results of the company have been good, um, and we expect, however, pressures on the margin, and the earnout will depend also on the competitive scenario of this sector. As to the reverse factoring of the group, we now have 270 millions of reverse factoring, and 162 of these were related to Acea Energia in December 2025. We expect reverse factoring to be a stable net of what we are going to take away from Acea Energia. No, I think you asked the question about the asset rotation. Now, as we said in the business plan, production or generation is functional to support the consumptions of the group. Photovoltaic plants, energy plants, though it might not be a physical self-consumption, it can also be a virtual self-consumption, but we're not going to dispose of this. We are growing organically in our businesses, in the water business as well, thanks to the concessions that we have, grids, thanks to the growth of CapEx in the environment with the fourth line of San Vittore and the WTE in Rome. We're growing there as well, and this is something which will remain as it is in this moment. Now, as to the other question that you asked, about the review of the business plan. Certainly, after this transaction, we are working to update the business plan, which we will release between the end of 2025 and the beginning of 2026. The last question was related to the guidance, 6-8%, and the variability of this range is related to the prospects of the environment market, OpEx, and the number of projects which are part of our business plan. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Perfect. Thank you. The next question by Emanuele Oggioni. Now, thank you. Thank you very much, and congratulations for the result. I have more strategic questions, more high-level questions, aiming at what you probably will better outline within the next business plan. My first question is about the potential re-leverage. I guess that from now on, regardless of the closing of the energy supply will occur at the end of 2025, beginning of 2026. But I guess that you will start with the rating agencies to underline the fact that 94, 95% of your EBITDA is regulated, and so you are to be considered almost a pure regulated company and no longer as a diversified multi-utility. And therefore, the financial leverage can and must increase and change versus the previous concepts where we looked at the debt on EBITDA, whereas now perhaps we should look at the debt over RAB. So my question is, when do you think that you can align, your leverage, basically to go higher up towards a pure regulated business leverage? And then another question is the payout ratio. Over and above the possibility of investments, CapEx in regulated businesses. Of course, depending on the concession in the energy distribution and the possibility to acquire gas distribution um, after the disposal of some companies or over and above the waste to energy plans and the approach you have, I think there is some room to grow the payout and the remuneration of shareholders. Are you going to do this? Now, as to the re-leverage, well, this is something that we constantly discuss with rating agencies. Of course, we need to wait indications on their part as to how we should proceed. Now, we have a threshold of 3.839 net debt EBITDA ratio, which give us the margin versus 3.4 and 3.5. But our peers are around 5, 6 times the EBITDA. So widening this ratio for Acea means doing more versus what we do within our infrastructure businesses. I agree that now we are a pure infrastructure company, and 95% of our EBITDA comes from regulated businesses. And so what we can assure is a constant dialogue with the rating agencies and with the update of the business plan. I guess this will also confirm the rating agencies that Acea has transformed and moved versus an infrastructural company. With the update of the business plan, we shall review perhaps some of the indicators, but we'll have to wait until then. Thank you. Now, the next question, Davide Candela, Intesa Sanpaolo. Good afternoon on my part, and thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for allowing me to ask my questions. Now, first question about generation. Now, talking about physical or virtual hedging within the company, now I wonder whether the hedging policy of the company will aim at stabilizing the losses of this business and be less exposed to the energy scenario, um, expecting also a decrease in prices starting from next year. And then a question about water. Can you give us an update of the market? What are the main regulatory issues, and what is the potential for Acea to widen the perimeter of the water business for Acea? Is there a problem of tenders, or are you taking part in tenders? Is there any company that you're looking at that might be interesting for you? And then gas distribution, this is the third question. Could you give us perhaps some help to better understand your strategic roadmap here? Basically your goal in terms of geographic positioning and also strategies and synergies, since we're speaking of infrastructure businesses, and what are the main drivers to grow in this kind of business? Okay, I'll start from the very last question that you have asked. Now, gas. was set up to concentrate in a company the gas activities that we have in Abruzzo and in Umbria. And the goal of the company is that of analyzing opportunities on the gas market. Opportunities, however, that must be in synergies with the other networks, water and energy. Of course, gas is different from water and different from electricity, but managing a network, if you have a network close to it, you might have synergies that you can extract. As we said during the previous conference call, we are assessing opportunities along these lines. And then, if there are tenders for big networks in areas where we are present with the water business and with the electricity business, we will assess the opportunity. The other question was about generation, I think. Now, today we produce 1 terawatt a year, which 60% is produced through renewable sources of energy. The total consumption of the group is 3.3 terawatt, and therefore there is the possibility of you know um, use renewable sources so that we can move to the physical consumption totally rather than only the virtual consumption. Now, as to the water business, the history of Acea is very clear. Now, recently we had three tenders for water concessions. The first in Imperia, where we were awarded the tender. Other big operators presented their bids, and then another tender in Syracuse, and the third tender of Benevento, which is still to be awarded, uh, but the first to submit the bid is the Acea Group. Now, of course, we will take part to the tenders we will see going forward. As we said recently, there are important tenders in Campania. There are also other tenders which are going to be announced, and then there are designing projects ongoing, and we will look at all of the opportunities. Now, to grow organically, of course, then you need to take into account the M&As are related to opportunities. The strategy is to bid for all of the tenders that are going to be put on the market, and we shall focus our attention and we'll make all the efforts to play, the best in our capacity. Now, I'd like to remind you that if you have a question, you can press star and one on your telephone. Ladies and gentlemen, at the moment, there are no other questions from the conference call. Well, then, thank you very much for taking part in this conference call. And we are, of course, at your disposal if you have any follow-up question. Thank you very much. And I hope you'll have a good summer. Thank you very much. This is the conference call operator. You can now disconnect your phone. So the conference call is now over. Thank you.